Welcome. In this video, we will analyze one of the most misunderstood points within Tolkien's writings, particularly The Lord of the Rings. We will establish once and for all, with appropriate textual references, how much the Witch King of Angmar was truly powerful. Power, in the narrative universe of Tolkien, is something far from defined. There are divine and semi-divine forces, sacred or malevolent, that can exert their will upon the world. But even the most insurmountable powers can be defeated through hope, which can come from a sacrifice or from the actions of the smallest and seemingly insignificant beings who can truly change the course of events. The Witch King, as you well know, was the leader of the 9 ringwraiths. According to the Silmarillion, section of the Rings of Power and the Third Age, they were great kings, sorcerers, and warriors of men, corrupted by Sauron with a promise of immortality, who then fell under his sway and became slaves to the will of the bearer of the One Ring. In the same section, it is stated that 3 of the ringwraiths were great lords of Numenor. Along with Frodo's description of the faces and stature of the Nazgul at Weathertop, we notice that the Witch King has a greater stature and gray eyes and silver hairs, traits that are unmistakable signs of Númenórean lineage. Thus, he was already of high Númenórean lineage from the beginning, infinitely greater and more powerful than the ordinary humans of Middle-earth. Furthermore, it is possible that even before the birth of the Black Númenóreans, he had become a follower of Sauron, and that his domains had become subordinate to those of Mordor. So, a great and noble lord of Númenor with holdings in Middle-earth, who is seduced by Sauron and gains forbidden knowledge that opens the way to sorcery and spells, just as happened later with the Black Númenóreans. The difference is that he came into possession of one of the 9 rings of man, most likely the most powerful one. With it, he gained glory, wealth, and power, being able to govern the world of men, but at a very high price. He was forced to lead an existence between life and death, and his will and independence vanished along with the memory of his past life. He became Sauron's most powerful servant and also his most faithful, and he continued to serve his master for millennia, right up until his end. After this necessary introduction, we can delve into the description of the theme at hand. In letter 210, Tolkien explains how the true power of the Nazgul lay in the irrational fear they instilled in the hearts of men. They were powerless against the courageous and invincible to those who feared them. He also specifies how their strength increased in the presence of others of their kind, and especially how they became more dangerous than ever with the fall of night. They emanated the black breath, a dark and foul aura that, if inhaled or if it came into contact with wounds, could drive the unfortunate victim to madness and turn them into a wraith, a soulless being subordinate to the ringwraiths. This poison was their most lethal weapon by far. They were also armed with enchanted and cursed steel weapons known as Morgul blades. Furthermore, they did not respond directly to Sauron, but to their leader and, above all, to the bearer of the ring. This marks the first distinction between the common Nazgul and the Witch King of Angmar. In fact, although they depended on Sauron and obeyed his orders, if they had encountered the ring-bearer without the Witch King leading them, such as Frodo while he was wearing it, they would have obeyed him. In letter 211, it is emphasized how the Witch King was superior in every respect to the other 8 Nazgul. He demonstrated, fundamentally, the ability to control the elements, particularly fire, according to the same principle as Sauron and Melkor, albeit on a vastly inferior scale. He was also capable of destroying or weakening physical objects with his mind, often reciting ancient formulas in forgotten languages. He was able to control the weather and generate storms at will. He was an expert in necromancy and could seal spirits within the tombs of the former kingdom of Arnor. Furthermore, he was immune to the principle of impotence against the courageous, although he was completely powerless against beings able to carry the light of the wise, at least before the battle of the Pelennor fields. That said, many stop here with the analysis of the power of the Black Captain. However, it varies greatly throughout the history of Middle-earth. Like the other 9, it was tied to Sauron's power. The stronger Sauron was, the more the Witch King increased his power. So now let's analyze in detail the extent of his power during the Second and Third Ages of Middle-earth. For the Second Age, we have little information. We know he participated in the War of the Last Alliance, but we have no direct accounts of his deeds, except for leading Sauron's armies against the Free Peoples united against Mordor. After Sauron's defeat, he entered a state of quiescence until the year 1300 of the Third Age. From here began the long series of conflicts between the northern kingdoms and the realm of Angmar, which lasted for 6 years. The Witch King of Angmar reached the height of his influence during this period, taking his famous name from it. He transformed the once lush land of Arnor into a desolate wasteland filled with fog, storms, curses, and the specters of the Barrow-wights. It was during this time that the only weapons capable of killing him were forged, and Glorfindel pronounced his prophecy. There is a common misconception among many fans regarding this point. The prophecy did not actually render him immune to attacks from male humans. However, there was indeed a certain protection that enveloped the Black Captain. The spell of his undead flesh made him immune to any common weapon. Like the other Nazgul, he existed only in the spirit world. However, Sauron had equipped them with cloaks, mail shirts, and cursed, enchanted weapons that made them visible and able to interact actively with the physical world. The Nazgul could be stripped of these and rendered once again naked and powerless by spells or forces vastly superior to their own. However, they could not be killed by any weapon or cataclysm, and the Witch King was especially the most resistant of all 9 Nazgul. The only thing that could kill him were the blades of the Dunedain. If they had struck him, they would have temporarily broken the spell, making him vulnerable to common weapons. The only surviving ones were hidden by him within the old forest and guarded by one of the Barrow-wights. Towards the end of this period, with the destruction of the realm of Angmar, he nearly faced Arnor. As soon as the Black Captain appeared on the battlefield, all the soldiers fled in terror before him, while Arnor, resolute and thirsting for vengeance, sought to confront the specter. The Witch King laughed in front of Arnor and prepared for battle, but he fled before Glorfindel, who then pronounced his prophecy. Thus, in this part of his story, his power was, as mentioned earlier, superior to that of the other 8 Nazgul, as he was immune to the courage of his mortal opponents. In fact, he remained incapable of measuring himself against foes like the high elves of Glorfindel's stature, or superior beings such as the Astari. This is also evidenced by the subsequent period when Arnor took the throne of Gondor and was openly challenged to a duel by the Witch King. The first time, he refused, but the second time, he accepted the challenge, and the two presumably dueled within the gates of Minas Morgul. After that encounter, Arnor was never seen alive again. Now let's jump to the events of the Fellowship of the Ring. where the Witch King takes on the guise of a Black Knight, along with the other 8 ringwraiths. His goal is to move through Middle-earth without being discovered by prying eye. In fact, when they are discovered at Crick Hollow, they flee to avoid compromising their sole purpose, to recover the One Ring. However, from 3 main events, we can gain insight into the power of the Witch King during this specific time frame. And these are the arrival at Isengard, the confrontation between the ringwraiths and Gandalf the Grey, and the final showdown at the Ford of Burr. In the first event, we can understand the terror that the 9 specters, led by their Black Captain, could instill even in the former head of the White Council, Saruman the White. Upon the arrival of the specters, Saruman is so disturbed that he decides not to descend from the Tower of Orthanc to speak with his enchanting voice. This not only reveals the true threat posed by the 9 Nazgul, even in their weaker and less majestic forms, but also allows us to savor the cunning of the Witch King. He was not swayed by Saruman's voice, and when he captured Grima Wormtongue, he let him go, anticipating that he would lead to the downfall of the traitor Saruman. The second event is a direct demonstration of the power of the Witch King and the other Nazgul. Gandalf, after fleeing from Orthanc, finds himself riding to the slopes of Weathertop, where, as night falls, the Nazgul ambush him. The specters, cowardly fearing the wizard during the day, dared not approach. However, at night, Gandalf is backed into a corner, and only thanks to the defensive terrain of Amansul is he able to repel the waves of the 9 specters with flames, lightning, and light so intense and bright that they are mistaken for dawn from miles away by Aragorn. During the chapter of Elrond's council, Gandalf confesses that he was put to the test and could do nothing but desperately resist, keeping the ringwraiths at bay with his angelic powers until he could flee with the first light of day. Here we again see the cunning of the Witch King, who, confident in his ability to win and complete the hunt, sends only 4 Nazgul to pursue Gandalf, while he and the other 4 remain near Amansul, patiently waiting for their prey. Before examining the confrontation at the Ford of Bruinen, we must analyze an apparent discrepancy between the clash between the Nazgul and Gandalf and the arrival of the Nazgul at Amansul, followed by their subsequent attack on Aragorn and the hobbits. Indeed, according to many, Aragorn would have easily repelled the Nazgul. But the issue is much more complicated than it seems. It is true that the other ringwraiths were susceptible to Aragorn's courage, and the fact that Frodo had worn the ring, despite lacking the will or authority to dominate the wraiths, had some effect on their ability to act. Moreover, when Frodo stands before the Witch King, he utters one of the names of Varda and brandishes one of the blades of the Dunedain, charging at him. The Witch King dodges the blow, only allowing his cloak to be ruffled. But in doing so, he saw the blade and understood that it could wound him and expose him to damage from ordinary weapons, even potentially kill him with a well-placed strike. He thought of the place where the blade had been buried and believed that Frodo had defeated the specter of the barrow that guarded it. So, to recap, Frodo was wearing the ring. Aragorn was ready to react and was not afraid. Furthermore, Frodo had named a Valar, which had initially weakened the wraiths, and the Witch King feared that Frodo had the ability to easily drive away the Barrow Wights and possessed abilities similar to the elves. Therefore, believing he had won after stabbing the bearer, he decided to retreat, ordering the Nazgul to flee with him. But if he had known that Frodo was nothing more than a hobbit, he would have continued the assault and would not have only stabbed the ring-bearer before fleeing. He, along with the other 4 Nazgul, would have killed Frodo, the other hobbits, and Aragorn, and would have finally recovered the One Ring. Unfortunately, due to time constraints, we have to stop here with the video. The second part will soon be released, which will thoroughly explore the topic of the power of the Witch King of Angmar. Thank you for watching, and see you soon.